Hey, what's going on, guys? Jay here. Welcome back to another video on Humans channel this time. I am going to be the interviewee, and I'm behind the camera now. Oh, wait, I'm in front of
You're
the camera
in front
now.
of the camera.
So, new experience. I'm excited. Hello, Human.
Hi, Jay. How you going, man?
Yeah, good.
Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it on this fresh, cooler Sunday morning with no sun in Sydney. My first video back from my holidays, and you're in you're in front of the camera. In front of the camera, I'm behind the camera.
It's getting confusing.
It's getting confusing. We've just had some coffee. Speaking of coffee, as the channel is called Coffee and Camera, you've got your camera on you there. What are you shooting with today?
I'm on brand. I'm shooting with the Fujifilm X100V.
Another
As
Fuji
many
lover?
people know from my channel, this is the camera that I use every single time I go out.
Awesome.
But I do have a camera in my bag here that I might pull out later on.
I love
just
it.
to change things up.
Love it when people
But
show
yeah.
up with a surprise camera in their bags. And we did drink some coffee this morning.
Yes, we did.
After the first cup, we had a tasting of a coffee that I think you're involved with. Do you mind talking about that? Because I love coffee, you love coffee. A lot of people on this channel love coffee, so I'd love to hear about what coffee that was we drank this morning.
Okay, look, shameless plug, okay. I have mentioned this on my channel, but I am starting a coffee roasting business on the side. We're called Liminal Coffee, and the coffee that we had at Chinatown Country Club was the Costa Rica H1 Anaerobic Natural.
Amazing.
So nice and balanced, very, very sweet, fruity, and a little bit of booze from the Anaerobic Natural. But yeah, overall, very nice. They did a really good job at showcasing the coffee that we roasted.
That was amazing. I really enjoyed it. And not that you've paid me to say this, but I think my next bag is going to be one of those. I want to try it at home. Do a bit of coffee drinking at home. So thank you,
Thank you so much.
for talking about the coffee and your camera.
Yeah.
Which way would you like to go this morning, Jay?
People have covered the Circular Quay and they've covered the Darling Harbour. So what I thought we could do is go in another direction.
Sure.
And hopefully show people a different side of Sydney.
Let's do it.
City. Yeah.
Let's keep
go.
walking.
So episode 1
Episode 1, season
of
2.
season 2. I feel very honoured to be the first
Oh
one.
no, honor's mine.
If today was a little bit more sunny, it would have been perfect.
I know, right? All right.
You gotta work with what you got.
You got exactly. So let's talk about that. This is actually a great segue because I looked at the weather before we came out, and it's supposed to potentially rain today. Hopefully that won't happen. But talk to me about what you like to shoot when it comes to weather, because I've got people who say, well, I really enjoy shooting in the sun, so I only go out when it's sunny. And I've got other people, another camp, who goes, no, you go and you make whatever you can out of whatever you've got. So love to hear your thoughts on this, Jay.
So I'd be on the latter side. I do really accept whatever nature gives me,
Yeah.
because how do I say this? If you only go out during the days it's sunny, you're still missing out on a lot of opportunities, right? Because when it comes to street photography, you don't have full control over what happens on the street. On a day that's sunny, nothing interesting might happen. And then on a day that's cloudy, everything might happen, right?
Yeah.
You never know. So it's better just to take your chance, go out whenever you can, and just, hope that something good is going to happen. Unless, of course, you have a certain style that you want to achieve, and having good light is part of that style. In which case, yes, go with just good lighting days.
Not to put you on the spot, let's talk about that, because let's say there is someone who really is doing a very specific look or style, which is heavily reliant on shooting with sunshine. Harsh shadows, bright lights, which we all love. I do personally as well. And we just talked about a little bit around how they might be missing out on something that the rain brings. Do you feel like if you were that person who was only going out when it's super bright, sunny and beautiful, and you got your harsh shadows and all that, do you think you'll ever get bored, or do you think you feel like you'll be just repeating yourself, or anything along those lines? Or do you feel like, you know what, this is it, this is what I do, just day in, day out, I'll just keep doing what I do, and that's what people know me for?
I mean, to be completely honest, having good light is always an advantage, and there's never any downsides to having more good light. So I feel like I wouldn't feel like, I'm missing anything and I wouldn't feel bored.
Okay.
When there's good light, there's so many opportunities.
Yeah.
But I feel like having good light is also an easy way out. I feel like I'm always in cheat mode when there's good lighting and I'm in the right place at the right time. But when there's bad lighting or limited lighting, there's a challenge. And when you've been doing photography for a while, having that sort of challenge really motivates you to continue doing what you want to do. If I'm getting good light all the time, it's like I feel like I'm shooting the same thing all the time.
Right.
You fall into this kind of comfort zone where you're like, okay, good light, people walking towards me, I'm just going to shoot people all day, or I'm just going to shoot architecture all day. Whereas when it's cloudy, it's like, oh, how do I get the best out of the situation? How do I compose, or how do I find colors or available light that I can work with? And that's something that I find is where I'm at right now. I just want to challenge myself and build myself up as a street photographer, sort of thing.
Love that. I love that, because some of you may know I just came back from a trip in Europe, and before that, I think I was in a similar situation with you, Jay, where Sydney has been sunny and clear for months. Mm-hmm. We had very little rain, very little overcast, and this way? Yeah, I'll follow you.
Sorry. I go weird ways, sorry.
That's okay. And Europe was different, different scenery, different light, some rain in London, obviously it's London. And I haven't touched my camera since I've come back in Sydney, to be honest with you. I've been here for a week, and I spent a better time thinking about how I want to approach Sydney again, because Sydney isn't as big as some of the bigger cities in the world. It's a beautiful city, it's just not as large. And like you, I want to challenge myself a little bit, and I want to see if I can bring a different version of what I do with what we have in Sydney. So good to hear that. I guess we're on the same page on this one.
100%.
And the challenge of making a photo that's unique, right? I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but if you find a good spot where there's good light and people are walking through, again, trying to be conscious of not saying the wrong things here, but if you have some talent as a photographer, you can stand there and probably make a good photo.
Yes.
But that also means that anybody else can come along and recreate or make a similar photo in that same spot.
Yes.
I feel like if you really want to, make it, having that unique style, that unique visual voice, you have to get out of that comfort zone that you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Challenge yourself to go out maybe on a day like today where the light sucks. It does, right? And your chances of getting keepers today is probably going to be quite low. But when you do get one, my gut feeling is it's going to be a really good one, and it's not going to be one that I can recreate.
Sure.
Or anybody else could recreate. It's going to be very much your visual signature on it.
Sure. And that's something I found when walking the streets of Sydney is Sydney's a great place. We're blessed with really good light when the light is good. But however, because of all the buildings in the Sydney CBD, at certain times of day, you're going to get good light in certain areas only. And if you've been shooting on the streets of Sydney for a while, you'd know those spots. And it's very common when you're in those spots to see, other photographers just hanging around, shooting in the same spot. And sometimes, you get a little bit jaded, you get a little bit over it, because you don't want to do the same thing other people do, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be individual. Everyone wants their own unique style, and being in the same spot altogether really is a detriment for that. So for me, as I'm growing as a photographer, I'm trying to portray Sydney in a way that's a little bit different, a little bit more abstract, and show people Sydney in a way that, from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Basically.
That hasn't probably been done before, or it's uniquely you, right?
Yes.
No one.
I basically want people to look at my photo and be like, oh, where is that?
Yes.
Rather than, oh, I know that spot in Sydney.
Yeah. Right.
It's like something like that.
I think about some of the great local photographers we've got. Sam Ferris being one. He goes to Circular Quay, which is probably the most iconic spot in Sydney. Any tourist that comes to Sydney goes there. Anyone who's starting out including me, is naturally attracted to the Opera House and Circular Quay because it's so iconic. But his photos are very uniquely his.
Correct.
Nobody can recreate those, and if they try to, they'll be obviously copying somebody else's style. So it's the same thing I think we're talking about is, adding your own really unique visual signature that nobody else can reclaim.
Yes.
It's like fishing in a barrel, right? You're standing where you've got a lot of fish and you can just stab it and you get a fish out, where on a day like today, going somewhere obscure and trying to make a photo is going to be very uniquely you.
Yep.
Awesome. I'm glad we got that out of the way, and I'm kind of happy that we agree on this. It's been something that I've been thinking about a lot last week.
Yeah.
As I've come back and looked at my photos going, I had to adapt my style in Europe. I'm back in Sydney now. How do I change and continue on that journey of growing as a photographer? So I'm glad we're on the same wavelength there. I've noticed that you've been doing a lot of longer shutter speeds and blur motion recently. Is that part of your growing style of photography?
Yeah, so continuing on with what I was saying about trying to portray Sydney in a way that's not as obvious that it's Sydney, playing with longer shutter speeds really is kind of a good stepping stone towards that direction. The longer the shutter, the harder it is to kind of gauge where you are.
Right.
And the more subjective your photo becomes rather than objective. So my goal is to just continue playing around with shutter speed. Obviously being inspired by photographers before me, like Trent Park, doing longer shutter speeds really makes you think and wonder about the photos rather than just pointing out, oh, that's a great photo, or that looks pretty good, and make audiences be like, oh, what are they trying to convey? Or what does this photo make me feel? And what kind of message does this photo give me, right? What am I getting out of this photo? So I like subjectivity, basically.
No, I love that. I feel like, again, just have been thinking a lot recently. We keep walking.
It's a bit noisy here. Yes.
It is. When you have let's call it a single layer photo, a photo that's just pretty, you look at it, especially in this day and age where people have got Instagram and also social media, and we're bombarded by photos. You look at it one time and you go, okay, that's pretty, and I move on.
Yes.
But if you have a photo that's got a bit more depth, and again, I'm not taking away from any photographer who does the first thing I said, which is, a pretty photo, which I've made before as well, but a bit more complex with longer shutter speed or reflections or abstractions, it makes the audience stop. It makes them think, like you were saying. It makes them think about what you're trying to say. And I love that. I think that's something that I'm trying to do as well at this point in my journey with photography. So great minds think alike, I guess. Trying to think about what we can do differently as photographers to challenge ourselves and our audiences in thinking about what they're seeing from us.
I feel like as photographers, we all go through a very similar kind of progression. We all start off, with our eyes wide open, everything seen through rose-tinted glasses, everything intrigues us, we're taking photos of everything and everything, anything and everything. But, as you progress, you start to be a little bit more picky or conscious about what you're taking photos of. And I feel like everyone develops the same. At some point, you've mastered your camera, you've mastered your composition, you're playing with layers, you're playing with light, you're playing with shapes and all those things. And at some point, you need to find your own style.
Yes.
Basically, by combining all those things that you've learned, you're basically seeking out your own style. And I feel like I'm still at that experimental point where I'm still working with layers and shapes and stuff and slowly developing my style, which is fine.
This is totally fine.
Yeah.
Do you think you ever stop? Do you think we ever stop from learning and growing as photographers? And I think that can relate to life as well, right?
I don't think we'll ever stop learning as human beings. Like, you know, that's just the way we grow and, you know, develop. You know, you have a certain lifespan. Everyone is born and dies. So between that time, you want to make the most out of it. I hope everyone wants to make the most out of it.
Absolutely.
And by continually learning, that's the kind of joy that keeps you motivated and going. And yeah, for me, I always want to keep learning and growing. And as soon as I stop learning and growing, that's when I lose interest in things. And that's when I, you know, put down my glove or whatever and just say, you know what, I'm done.
Done.
If I'm not learning anything from something, then what's the point, right?
I'm going to take that one step further and I say, when I stop learning is when I die.
Oh yeah, I mean that's it, right? I'll be very regretful when I die if I haven't learned all that I wanted to learn. Even when I die, I might continue learning.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We don't know.
I'll be up in heaven learning.
We don't know, exactly.
Yeah.
Learning is very important, I think.
Wait, just sorry, one
Huh?
second.
Okay.
Human. Don't put the camera on me, but just kind of turn the camera up to the side over there and just have a look at how beautiful this is. I mean, the light's not perfect, but man, you
Beautiful
can never
city.
get tired of that.
This is sometimes my lunch spot.
Yeah.
Come up here to have some lunch and enjoy the scenery. We're lucky to have this in Sydney in winter. Today is a winter day, just for the record, for people
Definitely is.
who are watching from London. I was there a week ago and it was a colder day.
Oh man.
On a summer day in London.
How
than it
was the
is.
weather in London when you were there?
Mate, it was 20 minutes of pissing down rain, 20 minutes of colder wind, 20 minutes of the sun coming out, and 5 minutes of the sun coming out, being extremely hot and uncomfortable, and then raining again. But that was actually kind of fun for me, and I feel like it gave me an opportunity to play around with some things that I don't get to play around with in Sydney, like
Yeah.
water puddles, rain coming down while the sun's out.
Yeah.
So it was fun, but it didn't feel like a summer day at all in London. It felt like a winter day in Sydney.
I feel like that's a challenge in itself, having all the weathers all happening in one day.
In one day.
Street photographers in London really are amazing people, you know?
They're
It's
lucky.
very skillful.
They're very skillful,
Very
very lucky to
adaptable,
have
yeah.
a city that large that challenges you.
Yeah, exactly.
Even on a summer day like that. So I hope to go back to London one day and spend some more time there. I only had a day, but today's about you. Anyway, let's talk about you, Jay.
Yes.
What do you want to do next? You want to stay here for a little bit and see what we can
We'll hang
find?
around here because, okay, so I might not have said this already, but I do like to take more photos of people.
Mm-hmm.
I like to include at least a little bit of human elements in a lot of my frames. And so here would be the perfect spot. We've got a lot of tourists here in Sydney. Sunday's the perfect day for them to be out and, you know, exploring the city. And so being here amongst everyone is good. I'll be a fish out of water if there was like no one here. It'll be a very awkward moment.
Just
So what I
shooting.
tend to do is I'll just walk around and I'll look for moments that bring out emotion in me.
Okay.
So I did mention it in my threads, and you did see the message, and we'll touch on that now. But lately, when I go out and shoot, I shoot on impulse. I don't really think about anything in my mind. I just see a scene. If it evokes any emotion in me, I pull out my camera like this. I don't even look sometimes, and I just take a shot.
Okay.
Whether it comes out good or not, it doesn't really matter. It's all about seeing the photo and making myself feel a certain way. So even if the photo is blurry, even if the photo is like got a little bit of imperfections or out of focus, when I shoot for myself, it's more about the emotions that come out of the photo and what I felt during that time. And the best photos that come out are the ones that, you know, obviously are in focus and are perfect, but also speak. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. When you see a scene and it's very relatable because there's humans in it, then I think anyone can appreciate that kind of photo and appreciate the imperfections.
Imperfections are part of life as well, aren't they?
Imperfections are part of life, and I've grown out of trying to be perfect all the time. You know, you'll never be satisfied if you're chasing perfection.
I think that'd be so boring. If everything
Yes.
was always perfect, I think you'd be bored out of your mind.
Exactly.
Talking about the human element, you mentioned that just a couple minutes ago around how important that is to you. Can you tell me a little bit more why having a human subject in your images are important to you?
Sorry, just
No,
one
you're
sec.
good.
I got a Jesse Marlowe moment here.
Ooh, Jesse, I don't know if you'll be watching this, but there you go. I'm sure he never hears that joke from anyone.
This is a bit out of character, but I'm shooting non-human subjects. As I was talking about shooting human subjects, something like this pops up, and it's just like, well, I can't miss this opportunity.
So, the question was that the human element.
Yes.
And of course, as you were shooting that, I was thinking about you do color and you do black and white. So, before I lose my train of thought, let's talk about the human element, and then after that, maybe we'll talk about how you choose between when you shoot in color and when you shoot in black and white.
Sure. When it comes to color, I used to always shoot in color. Back when photography was still new to me, I enjoyed shooting in color because it was a true representation of what I saw with my own eyes.
Okay.
When I was in Japan, there were so many nice colors. When I was in Vietnam, it's just like an explosion of different colors. And that's what intrigued me at the time. But the more I took photos and the more I started honing in on that more human elements, I find that black and white has a better way of expressing emotions
Okay.
and expressing, like, you know, the non-tangible aspects of human, human elements that color just can't do.
Okay.
Because for color, if you take a photo of a human, what you see is what you get, basically. And sometimes it might work out, especially if colors are important in the frame. But when you're trying to convey emotions, you don't necessarily need color. And if you're trying to use color to kind of, mask that fact, then I don't think the message is coming across as strong.
Right.
So that's why I'm starting to do more black and white stuff. And also, black and white, I tend to shoot in black and white all the time now. Through my camera, what I'm seeing right now is black and white. What I shot before, those colorful signs, was still in black and white because
Okay.
I feel like black and white, you're working with tones. Color, you've got too much to worry about. So when you shoot black and white, if your tones are good, you can be sure that your colors are going to turn out looking really, really nice. Yeah.
So would you say color can be a distraction from the message sometimes?
Color can be a distraction to your eyes when you're shooting, and it can be a distraction to the message.
Love it. Okay. Love
Yeah.
that.
I mean, unless you're shooting like a protest and people are wearing the colors of their nation,
Right.
shooting in black and white might not be applicable.
Right.
Did I say shooting in black and white?
yeah.
Shooting in color might be more important in
More
that
important.
aspect.
Sure.
But for, my purposes and my shooting and what I'm doing, it's not really. It really isn't. Oh, the sun's coming out.
The sun's coming out for a minute. I know.
Yeah.
Does that change where you want to go next, or are you still happy to
You see all this construction, and I'm kind of put off by it. I do want to backtrack then.
backtrack? Yeah.
And go that way.
Let's go back that way.
Yeah. Different angle, this side of me.
So let's go back to the human element then. What is it about having a human element in your photos that's important to you?
I just think I'm just curious about humans, other people. Like, I have a genuine interest in how other people live their lives or how other people, express themselves. And
Right.
it's, I don't know, I just like it. It's hard to explain.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I understand. I just thought about another question that came to my mind, which is around legacy. And I think the reason I'm thinking about that now is I was listening to the Phil Penman podcast on street life with John and Mark yesterday, and he mentioned legacy, and that was the first time I think I've heard any photographer talk about the legacy, right?
Yep.
I don't know about you, I'm sure it's true about you, but I do look at some of the most iconic photographers. Henry Cartier-Bresson will be probably one of my top ones.
Yep.
Obviously, he's long passed away,
Yes.
but he's probably looked at as the father of street photography, and his images are some of the most iconic images in the history of photography, in my opinion. Do you ever think about your legacy around photography? Or obviously you've got quite a large YouTube following as well, and now you're doing coffee. Do you ever think about that as what's it going to be like? We talked about being dead.
Yeah, I mean,
after you pass away.
It's always crossed my mind, once in a while, especially when I review my photos on the computer and I see a photo that I really like. I'm like, oh, how would people perceive this photo 20 years from now?
Right.
Or like, what will people think when they see this photo when things have changed,
Of course.
right? And if looking at it from another person's perspective, it turns out really good, then I'm like, okay, this photo might mean something to someone. But again, like any photo might mean something to someone.
Mm-hmm.
We're just kind of cursed in the fact that we live in a digital age and everyone's got a camera now.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
your photo might not be as special as, say, someone like Cartier-Bresson, who back in the day was one of the very few people who had a camera and was actually documenting what he saw. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more of a task to make a photo that means something, but everyone's up for the challenge, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
it's fun.
So you do think about legacy. Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to talk about, Jay, that I haven't asked you about and that's top of mind for you?
Human, what are your thoughts on focal length when it comes to photography?
Oh my gosh.
And this is something that photographers, or street photographers especially,
Yeah.
have a very heated debate about.
Yeah.
Focal length can be a very polarizing topic,
Sure.
and you've had John on your channel,
Yeah.
and he shoots with a zoom lens.
Zoom. He does. It's
And
true.
on the longer length, it's almost hitting 200 mils. So what are your thoughts about that?
Great question. So I've been shooting on the same camera that's got a fixed lens for a year and a half now, and I still love it. And I would have never thought about shooting at a 28 mil ever before buying this camera.
Mm-hmm.
And doing anything else now seems like impossible, which is something I've been playing around with, the idea of going back to a 50 mil. So before using this camera, I used to shoot on the equivalent of 50 mil. That lens was on my camera for 2 or 3 years. Never really took it off for day-to-day stuff. But now I'm thinking about, as I'm growing and my style is potentially evolving a little bit, maybe it's time to start looking at the 50 mil again.
Yes.
But saying that, I still feel like for day-to-day street, especially if you're on a bus, on a train, which I spend a lot of time on, commuting back and forth, even in the airplane, when you're in tight spaces, you need to have the wider range to be able to get a full story. To me, at least, a full story is really important. To give the audience a chance to really be in that space that you were,
Yes.
as opposed to, really pinpointing part of the scene that you want them to see. So that's, without taking too much time, because today is your day, that's kind of where I sit on that. Is I feel like you need to stick to one thing for a long time until you feel like you've potentially mastered it or you're getting bored with it. And that's why giving yourself limits is really important in photography to me. Before, again, I feel like I'm hopping on it, I won't take away from you, but I feel like I got to a point a few years ago where I'm like, okay, I'm bored, I'm gonna buy a new lens. I buy a new lens and I go with it once or twice, I'm like, that's not doing anything for me.
Yeah.
I'll go buy another lens. I'll go with that for a couple more days, and I sat at my house looking at my closet with one camera and 6 different lenses.
Yeah.
And I rarely use 5 of them. So, yeah, to me, I think 28, 50, and occasionally maybe a something a bit different, but 28 is going to be my day-to-day. Every day, carry 28 mil.
It's fantastic. That's a good. That's
What about
a good
you?
Answer.
I mean, obviously, you've got a fixed lens camera as well there, which is your everyday carry, I assume, Jay?
I'm gonna take a lot of heat for this. I shoot with the 35 mil exclusively most of the time for my street work, but in all honesty, I'm very open to any focal length because I started off with a zoom lens, an 18 to 200 Canon lens, and that was my travel lens. That was all I took on travels, and it was fine. Like I got every single shot I wanted anywhere I go.
Right.
And so there are merits to using a zoom lens for taking photos on the street. And what people don't realize is different focal lengths have a different way of conveying a message.
Of course.
Right? I know there are purists out there who say, you know, you gotta really get close to people to really bring out that emotion, like you're feeling like you're right in front of their face. Everything feels raw and intimate.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes shooting at a telephoto lens, it feels intimate in another different kind of way.
Okay.
Sometimes the emotions that you can bring out with a longer focal length is just as impactful and just as emotive as, say, a wider lens.
Right.
And especially for people who are more introverted, they tend to feel more when they're looking at a photo taken with a telephoto lens. Because that's generally how they see things, you know, from a distance. And when you can really capture someone's emotions or their face or a scene from a distance, for them, it's like, whoa, that's super impactful. Whereas if they see a super wide shot, like getting up and close, like Bruce Gilden, they might feel a little bit intimidated. They might feel a little bit imposing. Like sometimes when I look at photos like that, I also feel like, oh, like I feel scared. Like, of course, that's an emotion, right? But it doesn't make me enjoy that photo as much. It's emotions in a different way.
That's so good, man. That's very deep, actually.
Some people might be like, oh, I love this photo. Like, I feel like I'm right in the moment. I feel like I'm capturing the photo myself, and that lady's face was whatever. But some people like me, I'm just like, whoa, that's a little bit too much.
That's too close.
Like, I respect the photo and I respect the photographer and what he did to get that photo. But for me, it's like, it's too much.
Too much.
It's too much, yeah.
So, as you said earlier, subjective, right?
It's a different kind of appreciation.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
I never thought of it that way as over the last year and a half, I've worked on my courage to get closer and closer to people.
There's some dogs here.
There's some beautiful dogs here. Let me see if I can, there we go.
Hi. So cute. Are they yours?
Sit. Stay. Hey.
What are their names?
Kuma.
Kuma.
Neo.
Oh, there's a big bear, Kuma, and Neil.
Kuma, come here. Sit. Sit. Good. Stay. Stay.
Ah,
Oh, that's so beautiful. How old are they?
so cute.
1.5.
Yeah.
Out area. 7 months. 7 months.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Kuma.
They're so tired. Hello.
Oh my gosh.
They're just sitting on top of each other.
Like little lions.
Oh dear. They're full of energy, aren't they?
Kuma. Hey. Hey.
Oh, good boy.
I'll get out of the frame.
Hello.
Stay.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
You don't see that every day.
No.
And they're not humans, obviously, but as photographers,
You can get
we
close to
take
that.
any opportunity we get. Right?
They're like little lions. That's
They're
incredible.
beautiful creatures.
Wow.
They got purple tongues.
That was mad. That's mad.
Interesting fact. But anyway, like we're talking about focal lengths, and that's my view on focal lengths.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very valid. Very valid. Is there anything in life that scares you, Jay? Let's end. Well, we don't have to end, but this will be one of those kind of deeper questions that might get us talking about something more, or it might be a way to kind of wrap things up beautifully.
When it comes to things that scare me, I'm scared of not being able to achieve what I want to achieve,
Yeah.
you know, at a certain point in my life, age-wise. So I've always set myself goals, achievable goals, mind you. You know, things like, where do I see myself in 2 years? What do I want to achieve in 2 years? And so far, I've been hitting those goals pretty well.
Well done, man.
Luck is on my side, but anything can change at any time. And right now, I'm feeling like a lot of things have slowed down for me. Even though new opportunities have come up, I still feel like things are moving pretty slowly. So my biggest fear is basically just failing to achieve what I set out to do.
Okay.
And I feel like that's a normal fear to have.
Yeah.
And I feel like most
I have
people
the same
have that fear.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I want to travel, in 5 years' time, I want to save up enough to travel to Europe for a good month or so, right? And if you don't hit that, it's a big, that's the fear you kind of get.
Yeah.
It's like, and for me, that's the biggest one. Another fear that I have is losing the passion that I currently have.
Wow. That's deep.
And photography is great. I've been keeping up with it for the last 6 years, but I never know. And this is the thing with human emotions is you never know when something just might die all of a sudden. It could be because of your life. It could be because of family. It could be because of any external factors that'll influence you to stop doing something. And the biggest fear is me having invested 6 years of my life into something or anything that all of a sudden I lose interest in it. Oof. Like that. And it's hard for me. And I think about it all the time. Some days when I go out, I shoot and everything turns out looking bad, that's usually the time when I start thinking about, oh, am I a failure? Am I not good enough?
You have those doubts.
Yeah,
right?
I have those doubts and it creeps up on you the more you mull over it. So it's a natural human response, but that's.
So how do you then deal with that emotion? Because I feel like that's something that a lot of people probably can relate to. I have very similar fears. I have very similar thoughts around what if this thing that I'm so passionate about, one day the fire just goes out. What do I do then?
The easiest way to fix this, and I kind of practice this a lot these days just to keep myself sane and grounded, is to think about it from the point of view of others. We're all humans. We're all going through life the same way. We might have different jobs, different life situations, but at the end of the day, you know, no matter who you are, you also go through struggles. We all go through different things at different points in our lives. And it's important to remember that you're not the only one going through these mental battles, right? And when you think about it like that, things start becoming more balanced. You start feeling more like you're not the only one, you're not the only failure in the world. Things are going to be okay. And that's what gets me through at this point in time.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's honestly one of the reasons I have this channel, is to help people understand that whatever challenge they're going into life, there is somebody else out there in the world that's going through it.
That's it.
I think it's a good reminder that we all have our own challenges that we're dealing with, but we're not alone. That there's people out there that we can relate to. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Well, what are you thinking now? Because that looks pretty. Let me just pan to it really quick.
We're at the end of the road here. We've got a beautiful monument in front of us. What I'm gonna do is, you just saw me pull this out, but I do have the Fujifilm X-T4 with a 55 to 200 millimeter lens on it. And I'm gonna take one shot at this point, just to show you guys what kind of photo you can get with something like this and what kind of emotions you can convey with a focal length like this that you can't achieve with a 35.
Love it. Let's
I
see.
missed my opportunity before I was talking. There was a guy just standing in front there and his silhouette was like right there, but I'll try it with this guy right here.
As he walks away.
And he was.
I'm sure we'll have others.
Yeah.
Sure we'll have others. Jay, while you're setting up, I just wanted to see if there's anything else that you want to talk about, anything that I didn't ask you, or anything that you wanted to share?
Not really. I can't think of anything from the top of my head. I just feel like, you know, if you're out there shooting, try to think about it in a different way. Don't step out of the comfort zone and shoot something that you've never shot before. Challenge yourself.
Love it, man. That's a really good message to leave people with. Thank you so much
No
for
worries.
coming out this
It's my
morning and
pleasure.
spend time with me. I want to
Thanks,
try to
man.
reach out with this hand and give you some knuckles. Thanks, man.
Thank you.